9:10 here, Big 550 KTRS, and big day here at the Big 550 KTRS. Thanks to Andrew and Frank, who have done yeoman's work in getting us situated to cut a deal with Channel 11. We're now broadcasting on 11.2, our very first day on 11.2. For those who are tuning in to 11.2, we are a radio station here in St. Louis. We're KTRS 550 on your AM dial. And we'll be coming to you at the 9 o'clock hour each and every day. So welcome. We thank you for sticking around. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for allowing us to come into your living rooms. We're all still on the radio, 550 KTRS. We still got the app. We're still at stltoday.com, the opinion tab. We're also at KTRS.com as well. A little bit later, we're going to talk about Stan Kroenke and this new report from the Los Angeles Times that says Stan Kroenke just basically announced that he's leaving St. Louis. Basically, he has announced that he's building a $1 billion, 800,000 seat stadium in Los Angeles. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on, maybe take a couple phone calls. But first, Gabe Crocker's with us. Gabe, you are the St. Louis County Police Association president, and you've been on the show numerous times talking about the Ferguson deal. Over the break, you were asked to be part of the contingent for the two funerals, or one of the two funerals in New York?
That's correct. We went up there as myself and three other officers from the St. Louis County Police Department went to New York City to attend the funeral of Officer Ramos. It was one of the two officers that were murdered in New York City about 2 weeks ago.
And the second funeral took place yesterday.
That's correct. Yeah.
Very similar story. The police turned their back on the mayor of New York as he was giving his eulogy, as he was there. What happened?
You know, what happens is they simulcast this the funeral from inside the facility to the outside on large screens. And so what you're seeing, is again this repeat of where all of the officers are basically turning their backs towards the television screen. What I like to call, McGraw, a peaceful protest. And they're saying, listen, we're fed up with the politicians, we're fed up with the politics that are getting involved in some of these situations, and quite frankly some of the statements that Mayor de Blasio made have had a great impact on these guys and gals from the NYPD.
There's no question that there's a rift going on in New York between the mayor and the leadership and the police. That's
a rift that's going on in some cases nationwide. I mean, I've certainly had my disagreement with some local leaders. Right. So that rift is just something that is happening in different areas across the country. But of course, it's the New York Police Department. It's the biggest police department in the world.
Right.
What about the people?
What about the people who say it's a funeral? Mayor de Blasio is paying his respects. He's speaking at the funeral. Mm-hmm. The police officers, by turning their backs, is it's unseemly. It's not right. It's not the place to protest at a funeral.
Well, 25,000 officers did it while I was there. So, I think that the police officers see this as a different situation than that. Right. I don't think they feel there's any disrespect. In fact, I think in what their union leader said, which was, that some of these politicians or Mayor de Blasio has blood on his hands. So I think, again, this peaceful type protest where they turn their backs against somebody who they have no respect for, they don't care about him, they don't like him, they don't like his politics, and they don't like what he's doing for the city of New York. I think that these officers look at that as standing up for the officers that were buried last weekend and this weekend by turning their backs on this guy.
There's no question that there has been, since the Ferguson Michael Brown shooting and the Darren Wilson shooting of Michael Brown, since then the police have been front and center, and warts and all. It's sort of divided up good guys versus bad guys. Elected leaders versus police officers versus other protesters, and so they've all sort of closed ranks, if you will. And I'm not going to sit here and say that police officers shouldn't defend their own, because there is a special bond between police officers. You went to New York to a funeral of a police officer, and you had never met the man.
Correct. I mean, I joined, again, about 25,000 police officers that were there. It was probably one of the most incredible experiences of my life. Myself and the other 3 officers, we attended the wake on Friday evening. We attended the funeral Saturday morning. Also on Friday evening, we went to the location where the officers were murdered.
Right.
There's a memorial set up there. There was a lot of candles and flowers, and it's all gated off and under protection. And so we attended all of those things. And then we also attended, kind of keeping with the theme of that weekend, we visited the World Trade Center location and the 9/11 museum.
But is it all or nothing? Can't somebody be upset that the police were not charged with something with Eric Garner's case and yet still feel terrible when a police officer dies in the line of duty?
Yeah, I think there are people out there that feel that same way or feel that way, and I don't have any issue with that. You know, I've never been on this show or any other show and said that I fault people for having a different opinion than I do.
Right.
You know, that's okay. That's the foundation of this country.
Right.
We're allowed to have different opinions. You know, the saying that in many cases, people are entitled to their own opinions, but not their own facts.
Right.
And so that's where I start to have an issue with, and that's where I take issue with some of our local leaders who really kind of spew garbage and falsehoods and false narratives and utilize that for their own personal gain and their own political gain and popularity. We have senators that are doing it locally, and they're tweeting, and but yet they're critical of police officers at the same time in their job performance. Meanwhile, I think some of the things that our politicians have done while in office here in St. Louis are just as unprofessional, and aren't they on duty as well?
Yes, they are.
I mean, so it's a complete double standard.
So in New York, and again, this sort of ties New York and St. Louis.
Sure.
We're sort of going through the same thing. There was a report in New York. I want to say it was the New York Post on Friday that arrests are down like 90-something%, whether it's small little crimes, petty crimes, drug crimes, ticketing crimes, speeding crimes, nuisance crimes.
Yeah, they call those, a lot of that is called quality of life policing.
Right.
That's what happened in the Eric Garner case. A lot of people will say, well, he was just selling single cigarettes.
Right.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I can see where people say that is an issue, but remember, a minor speeding violation is what leads to a kid getting hit at a bus stop.
Right.
Speeding is still one of our number one complaints in a police department. Speeding vehicles in neighborhoods. Then you go in there and write tickets to residents in the neighborhood, and they're complaining about police writing tickets in the neighborhood when what you're trying to do is prevent deaths.
Well, and how many times have you been pulled over? I've done it myself in just a moment of anger where you say, "Can't you go find a real crime? I'm just doing 10 miles over the speed limit."
But sometimes these problems do start small, and we do address community concerns in policing, and you better believe I can tell you every day at a precinct here in St. Louis County, probably the number one complaint phoned in every day is someone that there's a speeding vehicle or they're rolling stop signs. Mm-hmm. So that happens to be a very low-level police activity.
Right.
However, it's probably one of the most publicly demanded police actions that we take.
With this, they don't call it a strike; they call it a slowdown in New York. But as you said, the union has told the police in New York, safety is number one. Yeah,
I don't think that they're necessarily doing a purposeful work stoppage union-wide or department-wide. You're going to see an impact, and we've seen an impact here in St. Louis as well. Reduction in arrests and some enforcement activity down in some areas. Why not? Because police officers are under fire. They're saying, why should I maximize my opportunity to be cast in a negative light or called a racist?
Right.
Why should I do all of these things to be potentially indicted for doing my job? That's a very scary premise for a lot of officers to deal with every single day. It's very scary. And so what you see is a ripple effect of officers that are saying, you know what, if that's going to be the fallout, if that's what I'm going to have to deal with, maybe this isn't the job for me, or maybe I should take it upon myself to just kind of lighten the load a little bit here at work and reduce the likelihood of being in those incidents.
So you're saying there's less arrests, less nuisance crime, activity by police officers here in the St. Louis metropolitan area?
In general, I think you're going to see those numbers. I know there's been some local reports where they showed tickets, and of course, a lot of this did occur when a large number of police officers were encumbered with the civil unrest. So, obviously, you see them pulled.
Right. If they're on 12-hour shifts, making sure that the place isn't burning down.
Right.
They don't have time to give a nuisance crime ticket.
Absolutely. So you're going to see that, continue, and I think you're going to see again, as I said earlier, kind of a ripple effect of that going into the new year. You're going to see some enforcement activity down, and unfortunately, that's just that's symptomatic of police officers in general and the law enforcement institution being under attack now for about 5 months.
And going back to New York, Giuliani had this broken window policy, which was, if it's a broken window, you fix it, because if you don't fix it, then there's another broken window, and then all of a sudden the roof caves in. Then all of a sudden it's a crack house, right? And so the police were told that these nuisance crimes, like selling cigarettes, in an open container or whatever, is the start, and the neighborhood doesn't want it, so that's why they go after these crimes.
That's why you're seeing the quality of life policing, and that's called the broken windows theory. That's kind of Intro to Criminology 101. It's taught the first day in criminology. That's one of the long-standing criminological theories that you hear at the universities, which is start with these types of crimes, low-level crimes, and then work your way into the bigger crimes. And hopefully reduce bigger crimes by paying attention to the smaller ones. That's broken windows theory.
Do you see police officers here in St. Louis leaving the job in the last 6 months because of what's happened?
I know that there's been a few officers that have left, but again, they're not bailing out. I think they're planning an exit strategy. And I think that's, again, they're not just going to come in and, quit. They have families at home. But I certainly think there are a lot of officers, especially here in St. Louis County, that may be contemplating what do I do next? Is this for me? Remember, the Michael Brown incident was in August. We've had, I believe, we had in 2014 about 7 police officers shot in St. Louis County or St. Louis City. 7 police officers that were shot in the line of duty. That's
since Michael Brown.
I think it's 5 or 6 since Michael Brown, and 1 or 2 before. I can't. I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm going to say it's about 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And I know some of these officers. They were. Again, shot in the line of duty.
Right.
So again, you have that one incident in August, but you have 5, 6, 7 incidents involving police officers being shot.
The 2 police officers who were shot and killed in New York.
Yes.
Was it retaliation? Was it just somebody who was mentally unstable that would have happened anyway?
Well, no. I think what happens is there are certainly people in our society that operate on the fringes, and I think, again, what I've said for months on end is when you have political leaders and people in positions of power, whether it's a sports franchise or whether it's politicians, they were pushing this narrative, and some of these people were a little closer to the edge, McGraw, than other people. They're out on the edge, and they just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and some of these people were more susceptible to that rhetoric than other people. And I think some people, like this gentleman that committed this, heinous act by assassinating 2 police officers in New York City, I think he was one of those individuals that was just close enough to the edge that with the tweeting and the reinforcement that he saw from the, certain establishments, certain politicians, Mayor de Blasio, our local senators here, who shall remain nameless at this point, and you know what? They pushed and pushed and pushed. They had a great time with it. And then they ran for the hills as soon as there was bloodshed.
Yeah.
And now they're, by the way, guess who they're calling?
The police.
Yours truly. And they want to sit down and talk.
How worried are police officers here in the St. Louis metropolitan area that there but for the grace of God go I? How afraid are they that somebody might take the law into their own hands and take this rhetoric and this anger and this angst and find a gun and to go after a police officer like that?
Well, it's already happened. There was a sergeant in University City who was gunned down at an intersection a few years ago. This stuff is already happening. This is already going on. One of our local senators again is pushing the race card issue with white privilege and those kind of terms. So now we're kind of off, militarization of police. We moved into use of force, and then we went through body cameras. Every week or every 2 weeks, it's a different topic that we talk about, and none of them really seem to gain any traction. So now we're on to some senators that are pushing, again, the race card, and you're seeing knee-jerk, horrible policy, horrible legislative actions being taken down in Jeff City by some of these politicians who, again, they're just trying to get attention. They're, again, knee-jerk policy, knee-jerk lawmaking is irresponsible, and we should expect more from our local leaders.
That's Gabe Crocker. Last thing, if those two police officers in New York were wearing body cameras, that wouldn't have done any good, right?
Wouldn't have stopped it. You're absolutely right. And remember, the incident involving Eric Garner was recorded on a video camera, and he was still not indicted. So, again, we've talked about body cameras. We've tested body cameras. There's a lot that people don't know about body cameras. They're being offered, again, by politicians. The Attorney General of the state of Missouri is panhandling around here trying to force them on people because he's got an election coming up. So, there's a lot that people, St. Louis citizens, need to look into these issues, like their own privacy in their own home, health concerns, your neighbor having access to that type of footage. There are things that we want to look at and be responsible about. Don't let the politicians drive the narrative. Do your own research at home. Look into body cameras yourself.
That's Gabe Crocker. You drove up to New York.
We drove, absolutely.
On your own dime?
No, the county helped out. The police association kicked in, and so we instead of trying to get 2 officers up there flying, we did 4 officers driving. It was great because we doubled the opportunity for police officers on our department to go there.
That is St. Louis County Police Department President Gabe Crocker. Gabe, you're always welcome here. Be safe out there.
Thanks, McGraw.
All right, 9:26 here, Big 550.